Democrat politician declares there's no need for the Second Amendment. The California Department of Education says the only way in which to teach ethnic studies is to indoctrinate our children. And Senator Elizabeth Warren says that the filibuster is racist. These stories and more on this edition of The Rundown. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Rundown. I'm your host, Craig DeLuz.
I'm your co-host, Mike Piwowarski.
Okay, Mike, I have to tell you, I think you actually pronounced it like you did the last time.
I may have just forgotten where we left off. That's probably what it was.
Okay, well, we need to make sure that we provide some consistency. So I actually appreciate, you pronouncing your name the same every time, because otherwise folks are just going to start calling you Mike P.
Yeah, it's been that way my whole life, Craig.
Right, or Mike PP. So, dude, all right. So the last time we did the show, I was actually there in the bourbon room and had a chance to partake of a number of different samples. And I'm looking at kind of the lines behind you, and I see a disturbing lack of progress in consuming of those samples.
Well, some of us can't consume the samples as quickly as you do, so we're back to normal speed of consumption here.
Well, I'm glad that I could help set a better pace for you. So hopefully you'll be able to follow in my example.
Yep. I think we will be doing it. We will be boozing with DeLuz at the next opportunity.
Exactly. All right, folks. Hey, let's. Why don't we go ahead and let's get into today's stories. All right, let's start at the top of the top of the thing, and this is one that I think is nothing really new in terms of how some Democratic politicians feel about the Second Amendment. But there's a candidate who's running for Congress in New Jersey. Now, we all know that New Jersey is a bastion of pro-Second Amendment. It is the place to go to live if you don't want to have your right to keep and bear arms. But there's a candidate there. Her name is Lisa Murkowski. And she basically put out a couple of tweets basically saying that, well, we don't need the Second Amendment. It's like, why do we need the Second Amendment anymore? Specifically, let me see if I can run her down real quick. Specifically, what she said was, with standing armies of over 1 million soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, plus a nuclear arsenal capable of destroying a planet several times, the security of a free state does not depend on your rusty musket or AR-15, but we would all be safer with fewer guns. Now, that was included with this statement. When you get right down to it, there's no reason to have a Second Amendment and plenty of cause for protecting our... I'm sorry, let me start that again. When you get right down to it, there is no reason to have the Second Amendment and plenty of cause for protecting people from deadly weapons. Now, Mike, is it just me, or does this completely identify, does this completely just reveal, once again, the utter lack of understanding of civil rights by the Democratic Party?
Yeah, and it's usually civil rights across the board, right? But listen, her understanding of the Second Amendment is obviously just the Democrat line 100%. You don't need firearms for the security of a free state. You know what? It was never about the security of a free state alone. It was about tyranny, self-defense, providing for your family, everything that a firearm could be used for as a tool, rather than the political tool that the Democrats always try to use it as.
And the thing that makes it even worse is if we treated any other civil right like we treat the Second Amendment, people would be up in arms. But although I take that back, because we actually are starting to see that when it comes to things like freedom of speech and stuff like that. Now it's like, no, if anything that you say offends somebody on the left, then they get to take that right away from you. And they seem to be, and then they're putting in place laws that are once again doing the exact same thing. It is beyond frustrating. But then when you wonder why we say there is no compromise, you cannot compromise with some of these folks, it's because they utterly are not interested in compromise. They're just interested in taking away our rights.
Yeah, compromise is their cue that we know that they just want everything from us. Their compromise to them is you give us what we want, and we won't ask you for any more for 10 years. That's their compromise. There's no giving back. It's give us what we want now, and then we'll leave you alone for a couple of years. That's the Democrat version of compromise with
Oh yeah,
firearms.
oh yeah. It's like saying, okay, tell you what, they say we're coming. We're going to take your fingers, but instead of taking all 10, we're only going to take 2 for now. And we're supposed to compromise and be happy with the idea that, okay, yeah, well, hey, at least I get to keep 8
Right.
for now, because they're eventually going to come back for the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great analogy. You know, I say, when they come to our table for the Second Amendment rights, tell them, okay, well, let's get even. I'm going to need some of your fourth, your First, and your Sixth Amendment rights. Then we'll call it even, and then we'll start compromising from there.
Well, and part of this, and this kind of leads into, I think, our the next topic. Part of it is all about a plan to kind of redo our entire society. Now, those of you who are in the gun movement, and I know some of you don't necessarily get into other political stuff, but one of the things that I've been doing is I've been following things that have been going on with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, is really kind of getting into understanding kind of its roots and basically understanding Marxism. Well, one of the things that's being instituted in the state of California, and those of you who know me know that I'm a school board member, is this idea of ethnic studies. Now, I, for one, am not opposed to the idea of helping people to understand and get exposed to cultures other than their own. But ethnic studies has basically devolved into the pushing of critical race theory in our public schools under the guise of quote unquote ethnic studies. And it's not about ethnic studies. It's not about promoting that. It's about promoting an oppressor-oppressed society. And now that is now going to be a part of, or not going to be, is now a part of approved curriculum in the state of California. The California State Board of Education approved unanimously critical race theory as the substantive or the foundational part of ethnic studies at the high school level in the state of California.
I'm not sure my brain can even wrap itself around their definition of critical race theory. Craig, tell all of us that are not sitting there in behind enemy lines over there what they mean by critical race theory.
Okay, so first of all, you got to understand what critical race theory, the foundation of it is from critical theory, right? It's basically a way in which people who believe that they are morally superior to us and smarter than us look at society from their perspective and tell us how things should change. Now, it's not based on history. It's not based on fact. It is literally just based on their opinion of how things should be. That's critical theory. Now, when you include race, it's this idea where they want to come in and they want to point to and they want to say, okay, we need to change society because in our view, number one, there's this oppressor-oppressed thing. And there's a group of people that oppress people. Those would be white people. And then there are people who are oppressed. And that's pretty much everybody else, with the exception of Asians in their minds. They don't necessarily see Asians as, being oppressed, but they don't necessarily see them as the oppressors either. So in this, they basically believe that if you're white, you're evil and you're racist. If you are successful, so in other words, if you've gone to college, if you own your own business, if you've been married for a long time to the same woman, well, then your proximity to whiteness is what has helped you to be successful. In other words, I'm closer to being white than I'm trying to be white, and that's why I am successful. And things like, desiring to be on time, having a plan, these things are considered white culture, and so therefore are fundamentally racist and ought to be wiped from our society. That is critical race theory.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the first time I read through it and saw what they were going after, and then you and I talked about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I already know of a couple of court cases here in Florida where the defense was against the minority youth had committed crimes. It was, well, he's not, given the same opportunities as the young white youth. So that's why it's okay for him to go out and commit armed robbery. and if you say it's not, you're a racist. This is just absolutely ludicrous. This is the fourth step of political correctness, because now the parties in power that started pushing all this stuff in the first place. This is the next step of the cancel culture, and here we go. Everything that you've worked for, all the ideals, all your principles, it's not fair. It's not fair that you succeeded. I'd rather stay home and collect a nice government check and be equal with you.
Well, but and the thing is ultimately this is not even really about race. This is about tearing down of our societal structures, the tearing down of the family, the tearing
Right.
down of our political systems, of our criminal justice systems, because that's what Marxism is about. And if you go back and you read the Communist Manifesto and you go to understand Karl Marx and you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, you will see that the tactics and the terminologies are the same. They just change it. They just change the terminology from oppressor and oppressed to white people and people of color. Yeah. And the whole idea is that white people are the oppressed and everyone else are the oppressors and everyone else is the oppressed. And then what their goal is to tear down to society. And the problem with Marxism as a whole, and this is the thing people don't wrap around their head, is once you tear down the structure, they believe there's always going to be an oppressed and there's always going to be an oppressor. The problem is that if they remain in control, then they become the oppressor. And every place that has utilized this sort of Marxist thinking to foment revolution, because revolution is their goal, everywhere they've done it, the only thing that has come in its place has been dictatorship, true oppression.
That's it. That's right. And then you've got them walking through the streets with with nightsticks, beating you for just being an oppressor rather than based on your color or whatever it happens to be. Like you said, it's just it's a wave. They're riding this wave up. Right. Let's get to the top, and then we'll be in charge, and we'll smack everybody down, and then we'll take everything they have, and then we'll have what they had, and then we'll be better than they are, because we took what they had, except now we're not doing anything except taking what they had. So nobody's out making anything anymore. And we're all going to be eating out of garbage cans before you know it.
Exactly. And when the people rise up because they feel they're being oppressed, well, clearly they need to be put back in check. And thus the tyranny continues. Anyway, but by the way, that's now part of the official public school curriculum. It's not mandatory yet. There's a bill going through the California legislature that would require ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. So it may become mandatory, but it's not mandatory yet. So if schools want to do it, this is an approved curriculum, which for the life of me, I just don't understand how anyone could do that. But then again, that's really nothing new for California government. Take, for example, when California passed our assault weapons ban. California decided that they were going to institute another assault weapons ban. They already had one that didn't allow detachable magazines. Well, now, or without a bullet button. Well, now guess what? Now even that is gone. So they decided in California they were going to create this registry. And this registry, the funny part about it is, this registry, they want you to go online, register your firearm, take photos and pictures of it, and send it to them so that they knew exactly what it looked like and all of that. Well, the problem was, as people went on to try and register their firearms, they couldn't get on the website. They would go all the way through the process and get kicked out. Their registrations wouldn't get confirmed. Folks, it was a hot ghetto mess. Right. And so the Firearms Policy Coalition sued the state of California over this hot ghetto mess. And well, guess what? As a part of a settlement between the Firearms Policy Coalition, California gun owners, and the California Department of Justice, Javier Becerra had to admit, well, that their website, their registration process, the registration program, it didn't work. And it failed. And so it left tens of thousands of people out there who decided to register their firearms, to register their quote unquote assault weapons. It basically made them criminals because they were now in possession of unregistered assault weapons.
Yeah. And this wasn't like it failed once before the deadline or twice before the deadline. This thing, just did not work for almost a year, trying to get people to register, and they kept, well, we will push it back. It's okay. But they wouldn't tell you they would push it back until after it failed and after the deadline passed. And you had all these people that were trying to comply and couldn't comply. And they had no backup system. You couldn't even, well, you know what, could you mail me the form and I'll send it in? No, none of that going on. It was so horribly planned that it was doomed for failure. It's almost as bad as that original Obamacare website. We gave a bunch of people money and we don't know where they're from, but we're just going to let them manage it, and hopefully it works.
Well, the thing is that this isn't new. This is nothing new either for the state of California or even for the California Department of Justice. They had issues with, now, in California, you now have to go through, it's not really a background check for to purchase ammunition, but they call it a background check. Right. And they found like 1 in 6 people who should have been able to purchase ammunition were rejected. Now, mind you, the same person who oversaw the assault weapons registration is the same guy who oversaw the ammunition, the creation of the ammunition background check. Yeah. Is now the individual who is now running one of the biggest budgets in the federal government, the Department, the Health and Human Services at the federal level. Javier Becerra is now in charge of, you guessed it, Obamacare and that whole registry.
Yep.
I mean, it is insane. It's like the more he fails, the more responsibility we give him.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's hey, Javier, have a seat here. It's time for your annual evaluation. We've noticed you're pretty incompetent at everything you do, but you are rather good at spending other people's money, so we'd like to promote you.
It is beyond me. It is so beyond. I look at it, and by the way, folks, just so you know, you're getting a taste of what we've had to deal with in California, whether it's Kamala Harris, or whether it's Javier Becerra. Folks, you are getting a taste of this, or Nancy Pelosi. You're getting just a small taste of the sort of left-wing idiocy and incompetence that we have to deal with here in the state of California. And their answer to these problems is give us more money.
That's right. If we have more of your money, we'll just raise taxes. Don't worry. I know we said we won't, but we're going to, because we need more of your money to make you do what we want you to do.
Right. And they're not going to tell you what they're going to do with it, because we all know that transparency, well, it's not their thing. And if you want an example of that, well, just look at what's going on the border. So now, all of you know, and once again, none of this is now new. There is a crisis at our southern border, right? There are thousands, tens of thousands of children, unaccompanied minors, not to mention adults, but who are coming to our border, who are coming to our southern border, saying that they want to get into these United States. They're even wearing T-shirts that say, Biden let us in. But you've got all of these children now. We know how people got so angry and so frustrated, and they called Trump a racist because of him putting small children in cages and keeping them locked up for weeks at a time, and keeping them away from their families and their parents. By the way, what they failed to mention is, number one, that those were cages built by Barack Obama, but we won't talk about that. But then on top of it, now we see through leaked photos, and you guys are looking at them right now, through leaked photos, that Barack Obama's then vice president, now the president, Joe Biden, is doing the exact same thing. And well, where's the Democratic outrage?
I don't know how President Trump was racist for protecting the border from Hispanics, from white Hispanics, because we know from George Zimmerman that a white Hispanic is white and part of the establishment problem. So I'm not sure how keeping a white Hispanic from illegally entering our country made him racist. We watched Biden's press conference, his first press conference earlier this week, and when asked about and given an example of a young person, an underage person, and we're not talking a 16, 17-year-old. Specifically, they were talking 9 or 10-year-olds was the example that he was given. And the example was that person's parent, that person's mother, was back in Honduras. And President Biden said, well, if they're back in Honduras, we'll send them to Honduras because the best place for that child to be is with their mother. Now, You know why it's important to send a 9 or 10-year-old back to Honduras? Because they're not old enough to vote. The 16 or 17-year-olds, we may let them in. The other adults, we may let them in, and we'll give them a check and we'll give them a card. But a 10-year-old is not old enough to vote. So guess where they get to go? They get to go home, because don't fool yourself, folks. All this is about buying votes. That's everything that their border policy is about, buying votes. They don't care how much of your money it costs to take care of them while you're here, as long as they get to buy your vote.
Well, that's exactly what it's about. But the most frustrating thing about it is the utter dishonesty of most of the mainstream media, because, I mean, literally, this was, when this was Trump, it was, I mean, they lost their minds. All of the pundits on MSNBC and CNN and AB, all of those folks were all losing their minds. And now all of a sudden, you can barely even get them to say the word crisis.
Right. Yeah. And those facilities, are they overcrowded? Sure, they're overcrowded. They think there's a new president they're going to be able to come in with because they watched his campaign speech. To what President Biden said, yeah, it's the time of year that we get an influx, because it's a little cooler down there and it's a little easier to cross over, the Mexican deserts there. But it's horrible. Now there's so many more than normal down there, and they're not doing anything for it. And they're continuing to lock out the media. Well, we've got one place we're going to let you bring a camera in with our permission and under our escort. But Mr. President, will you allow us to bring cameras in? Will you commit to that? Hey, timeline. Timing's the whole right thing. The guy's so damn wishy-washy, Craig. It was ridiculous.
Oh my God, that press conference was.
They're not going to even let us in.
That press conference
killed
was
President
bad.
Trump over that.
That press conference was bad. I'm telling you, I don't see how any Democrat can look at that and have any confidence in him actually finishing his term. But ultimately, what they're going to wind
tapioca pudding.
Tapioca pudding. But ultimately, what they're going to wind up doing is their goal is basically going to be they're going to try and pass what they're going to call immigration reform, but it's not going to be immigration reform. It is literally going to be open borders. It's going to be a way in which they're just going to allow people to come through and become American citizens with no background checks, no process, no due process. They're just going to come on in, and like you said, it's going to be all about it's all about getting votes. And how are they going to do it? Well, they're going to do it by eliminating the filibuster. How are they going to eliminate the filibuster? Well, they're doing the same thing they're doing with just about every other policy that they're disagreeing with. They're calling it racist. That's right. You have Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's now declaring that the filibuster needs to be done away with because it is rooted in racism. So in other words, a process, a thing that was put in place, right, in order to help encourage bipartisan or people to encourage people to work across the aisle on policy to make sure that the issues and the concerns of the minority are addressed in public policy. That is now, they're saying, is now rooted in racism. I'm still, for the life of me, I cannot figure out exactly how that is, because even the president said, yeah, no, it's rooted in racism.
Well, racism is the catchphrase. It's the new catchphrase. I mean, they went on to say they were Jim Crow style laws. I just want to point out who Jim Crow was, and Jim Crow, created the Democrat laws for firearm suppression, for voting suppression, for the freedom of our black brothers and sisters that live here with us. It's absolutely ridiculous that they would call themselves racist by saying they were Jim Crow laws, but these are crap. The voting laws that they're trying to pass are the Republicans are trying to pass now are basically to stop theft of elections again. Stuff like, Craig, things like I don't know, you have to have an ID to prove that you're a citizen,
right?
That makes sense,
Crazy
right? I mean, I have to be a citizen
that.
of this country to vote. Why shouldn't I prove that I'm a citizen? It's absolute garbage. That elections have to be counted, within a certain time period. It's got to be done by midnight, or reported by midnight, or in by 24 hours, and it's got to be under observation. The way to keep 800,000 absentee ballots from showing up in the middle of the night in Pennsylvania. Yeah, it might be something worthwhile looking into.
Well, the funny part about it is that Democrats are complaining about the filibuster now, but guess who's used the filibuster the most?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Democrats.
Yeah.
They're the ones who've used it the most. Now, that
Yep.
was because in part they were in the minority.
Yep.
They've been in the minority for the last few years in the Senate. But see,
Right.
that's how it kind of works. Let me clarify. I've never seen Republicans in such large numbers talk about eliminating the filibuster when they were in the minority.
Nope.
When they were in the majority. But now you do see that with Democrats. Because see, Democrats, rules and process don't matter. What matters is getting what you want. The ends justify the means. And that's how they roll.
Yeah, you're exactly right. By any means necessary, they'll do what they want to do to get their way, to stay in power and have that control over you. By the way, speaking of control, Craig, where's your mask? I mean, aren't you still under a mask mandate there?
No, we're supposed to be wearing masks in public. My studio is not the public, so yeah, no, I'm
Just checking. I don't want to see you torn off or taken out of there and put in a California mask prison.
well. That's probably coming. That's probably coming next. Hey, all right. So for today's parting shot, I wanted to share this video, which is kind of fun. You guys remember the president trying to? We'll just put it this way: he had a challenge with some stairs. Check it out. All right, now I know people who are like, oh, well, that's just cruel and that's not really funny. And I'm like this, my attitude is, you guys elected him president. If he can't walk a flight of stairs, that's not my problem. That's more kind of your problem for voting for him. And I think just one more evidence that he is probably not physically able to keep up with the job. One, to prove that, and then number two, to be amused by it. Well, sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying.
I'm not old enough to remember, but I've seen the videos and a lot of it from the old Saturday Night Live when they were still funny before they got all political. Gerald Ford used to fall down a lot when he was president, but he used to fall down the stairs. Biden is falling up the stairs, and I'm not even sure how you fall up the stairs and continue to go up the stairs as you're falling up the stairs. But the best part about all of this, I believe, was when the White House press release said the reason he fell down was the wind. The wind knocked him off the stairs. That's what happened.
Right. No, I like the fact that I think he got hit by a golf ball and we just didn't see it.
That's hilarious. Now, that's just hilarious. And Don Jr. posted that on Twitter. I'm sure he didn't make it. Somebody must have sent it to him and he put it out there. But he took extreme heat from that as well. Oh, these are people that are supposed to be, above all of us. And now all of a sudden he's making fun of the president. Again, now the president's, you're racist if you make fun of the president of his age or of his inability to conduct a press conference and make sure racist.
Well, think about this. When Trump like leaned a little bit when he was walking up some stairs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They literally, all the pundits spent days talking about his health and whether or not he was healthy enough to continue as president. And I'm sorry, but this guy falls down the stairs, falls down going up the stairs. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, you guys, your moral outrage at something that is clearly funny. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about y'all.
Yeah. This whole administration's run by the chief of police from South Park. Nothing to see. Move along. Nothing to see.
On that note, folks, hey, thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of The Rundown. Remember, tune in every weekday. Remember, like and share. Tell your friends. Folks, this is the spot. This is The Rundown. Tune in.
Hey, come on back. We'll see you again. We're going to be doing this every day.
Anyway, talk to you guys later.